Nobody has more respect for women than I do. Nobody.
Hillary Clinton wants to abolish it, believe me. She wants to abolish our Second Amendment.
I think they didn't deny it. I don't think anybody denied it.
Other presidents did not call. They'd write letters, and some presidents didn't do anything.
Many people have come out and said I'm right.
You really do have to ask yourself, where does it stop?
Hello and welcome to Fallacious Trump, the podcast where we use the insane ramblings of an elderly man with a poor memory to explain logical fallacies. I'm your host, Jim.
And I'm your other host, Mark. A logical fallacy is an error in reasoning that results in bad or invalid arguments. And the logical fallacy we're looking at this week is playing politics. Because we're at the self-imposed every 11th. How many 11s is 143?
13 11s. 13
11s.
Yeah,
there we go. Yeah. This one, we were kind of talking about it for quite a long time.
Few episodes it's been since we started talking about it, since you mentioned it. Yeah, this is the first of our new ones that we've made up / identified that you
the 11th of the 11th.
came up with / identified.
Yeah, well, insofar as I kind of said, there's something there surely about playing politics, because it keeps coming up and it keeps irking me, and it sounds like it's a fallacy the way that it's being used.
Yeah, and at first I was like, nah, it doesn't sound like a fallacy to me. And then and then gradually you wore me down over a period of weeks.
Yeah. It's good to know I'm encouraged in these explorations. Yeah.
Yeah, so what we, I think, decided, what my understanding of it at least, and by all means tell me if you think you have a different understanding, is that this is a kind of a form of thought-terminating cliche, a specific version of that, where someone will shut down debate on an argument or avoid engaging with an argument from the other side by accusing them of playing politics. When actually what they are doing in most cases is doing politics, which is doing an act of governance.
Yeah.
And by accusing them of playing politics, what you're saying is that they are doing something to make themselves look better or enrich themselves in some way.
Exactly.
Rather than actually doing their job of being a politician.
Yes. Yeah, and also it's got kind of overtones or undertones of Machiavellian intents. When, like if you're playing at office politics, you're doing stuff in a self-aggrandizing way in order to move up the ladder. So you can accuse other people of just doing stuff in order to get ahead.
There's a focus on the personal benefit of it, or the benefit to your side compared to the benefit to the people you're supposed to be working for, your constituents.
Yeah, because at the height of the level that we're talking about, presidential and prime ministerial, you've reached the top of the ladder. So it's used as a thought-terminating cliche, as a way of diverting attention away from having to explain yourself, having to engage in the argument, having to counter any accusations by just saying, in making those accusations, you're just playing politics.
Yeah.
You're not doing what you're supposed to be doing.
Yeah, so examples of people actually playing politics, in my mind, and it happens on both sides, I'm sure, but for example, Trump trying to extort Ukraine into opening an investigation into Biden, that was using the machinations of politics to benefit himself. He wasn't doing that to help the USA. He was doing it to get his political rival investigated. Yeah. And the thing is, when people complain about that and say that this is not an okay thing to be doing, they then get accused of playing politics.
Yes, and it's difficult to pin down what the person means by well, what do you mean by playing politics? Once you say that, that's it. That's deemed by the sayer to be enough.
Yeah, I looked into the origin of politics, the word being used in a negative sense like that, to be saying that someone is doing something in a political way, meaning a negative. Yeah. And it's from the kind of mid-1800s that it started. And the reason I looked into that is because one of the examples I was looking at for Fallacy in the Wild was a 1971 Michael Caine film called The Last Valley, which was set during the 30 Years' War, which, as everyone knows, was 1618 to 1648. And Michael Caine was doing an accent I don't think exists in nature.
Right.
And he used the phrase playing politics. He accused the Pope of playing politics.
Oh, okay.
And I thought, this seems very early to be using a phrase like that. I don't think this exist. And sure enough, it was like 200 years before people had started talking about politics as a negative kind of way of doing that kind of thing. And the other thing that we've noticed about this, it's very context dependent. In order to figure out whether this is someone genuinely accusing someone of playing politics because that's what they're doing, or whether they're using it fallaciously, you have to know the motivations of the person who is being accused. So in that case, the Michael Caine accusing the Pope of playing politics, I had to figure out what the Pope at the time was doing and whether that was badly political. Turns out it was. I think it was Pope Urban, the last Pope Urban, who was very kind of nepotistic in terms of getting his friends and family lots of money and powerful
not quite
positions.
The Borgias, but kind of there.
So that was a fair accusation, and therefore it isn't one of our examples, because Michael Caine's character was using it accurately, not as a way of deflecting or stopping debate.
And 2 centuries ahead of his time.
But that means that you do have to understand the context behind the accusation of it, which made it take quite a lot longer to find the examples.
And also to be kind of short, because at the same time the meaning that we understood it to contain was also at the same time kind of coalescing and becoming a bit more solid. So each example you find gets you somewhere towards a stronger definition, and then you think, actually, what that does is reveal a whole bunch more examples. So maybe that's...
I hope that's the value of the examples that we give you in every episode, is that we can explain something pretty quickly, and this could be a 5-minute podcast where we just say, this is a logical fallacy, and explain what the fallacy is. But the examples hopefully show you how it's used in real life in politics and in TV and stuff. And that gives you a clearer understanding of the range of ways that people use it.
Yeah. And actually, I wonder whether many of the fallacies that we've looked at all require a lot of context. And we just have got used to that.
That's definitely true to some extent. It's certainly more true of informal fallacies. We'll be doing next episode, we'll be doing a formal fallacy, which we don't do very many of. And formal fallacies are ones where the form itself, the form of the argument, means that it is fallacious.
Yeah. So it's using formal logic. I guess that's where it comes from.
It is about the form of the argument. Whereas informal, it's not about the form, it's about how it's used, and therefore context is important. It's almost always important to some extent. It seems, in this case, I think, to be more than usual. So our first example this week, ironically, because one of the biggest bit of playing politics that's happening at the moment is the Republicans messing around with border security and asking for stuff and then voting against it when they get it, is Trump talking about border security.
Congress must fully fund border security in the year-ending funding bill. We have to get this done. They're playing games. They're playing political games. I actually think the politics of what they're doing is very bad for them, but we're going to very soon find out. Maybe I'm not right, but usually I'm right.
So this was the end of 2018 when they were trying to agree a funding package that would fund the government. This was what led to the 35-day government shutdown, the end of 2018, beginning of 2019, because Trump was asking for $5.7 billion in federal funds for his wall. And Democrats, true to what they'd been saying his entire presidency, were saying, we're not funding the wall. It's a fucking stupid child's idea of security. There are better ways to spend that money. We're not doing it. So that wasn't playing politics, arguably, because they were sticking to what they genuinely believed was the right thing to do for security and for the use of that money. What the Senate did then was they unanimously passed an appropriations bill for more funding for the government without that $5.7 billion for the wall. The House looked likely to also pass that, which would have then funded the government, and Trump said that he would sign it. But conservative media all said basically, he's totally kind of backing down. He's not standing up to them about the wall.
About the wall.
Dan Bongino, who was standing in for Tucker, I think, on Fox, said, he's, this is just not this is not the way that he said he was going to do it. And Ann Coulter came out and said he called him gutless. She said that his administration would just have been a joke presidency who scammed the American people. Rush Limbaugh got in the action. He said Trump's going to get less than nothing. The Drudge Report argued against it. And so because Trump was afraid of looking bad in front of all his right-wing friends, he went back on what he'd said and decided he wouldn't sign the bill that the Senate had already passed and continued to demand the $5.7 billion. The House then created a new bill, including the funding, passed it because they had the Republicans had control of the House. Basically, it was going to get blocked in the Senate because they didn't have the votes. So it was never going to go anywhere. They knew that. And Trump then spent the next 20 days blaming the Democrats for him refusing to sign the thing that the government had already agreed
to. Yeah.
Because the right-wing media said he looked like a loser.
So
that's him accusing the Democrats of playing politics over funding the border.
But doing it himself.
Yeah.
Yes, there's a lot of that involved, I think, with this notion of playing politics, because part of the playing politics is playing to the gallery. It's about looking good.
Yeah. So our second example is a tweet from Trump, April 16th of 2020. Democrats are blocking additional funding for the popular Paycheck Protection Program. They are killing American small businesses. Stop playing politics, Dems. Support refilling PPP now. It is out of funds. The Paycheck Protection Program helped businesses to get loans so that they could continue to pay their workers during the pandemic.
Right. Yeah.
That ran out of money because there's only so much money.
Yeah.
And so they wanted to refill it. And the Democrats wanted to make sure that money didn't only go to big businesses that had relationships with banks that they might be able to get loans from anyway and things like that. They wanted to make sure that it got to smaller banks who would give it to smaller businesses, community-based lenders and credit unions. And also they wanted, in that funding bill for dealing with COVID fallout, they wanted to continue to fund hospitals. They wanted to give $100 billion to hospitals and increase coronavirus testing and things like that. So that's what they were arguing for, and why they voted against the Republican bill, which simply added another $250 billion to the PPP pot. Yeah. So he's right that they blocked additional funding for the PPP. And the reason they were doing that was because negotiations weren't over. They were still trying to negotiate with the Republicans to get more stuff. And the Republicans went, here's a bill, sign this one. And they went, no, we're not signing that one. Keep talking to us about more stuff.
Yeah.
Is that playing politics?
No.
I don't feel like it is, because the Republicans have blocked the border security thing, which contained all the things they asked for, because, and we know this specifically because it's been said by plenty of Republicans and by people who are aware of Donald Trump's feelings about this, that they've blocked border security funding because Trump has asked them to, because it would make Biden look good if they fund it. But it would be a win for Biden, and he doesn't want that. He wants them to still be able to campaign on the border being at a crisis. So that's playing politics. That's using politics to make yourself look better and your opponent look worse.
Yeah.
Trying to negotiate for a better deal for your constituents.
Yeah, and holding up those fast tracking of by pointing out that there are bits missing, and that having done it before, the reported experience is that it's going to people that can afford to do it anyway. They're not in need of that. It's actually the small businesses that are being killed by
it just going to the big banks, essentially. Yes.
Yeah. So it ought to be looked at more closely, and it's the job of the opposition to employ checks and balances and hold any legislation to account and ask questions.
Yeah, if you sign the first thing that isn't a negative, then you're not necessarily getting the best thing. Yeah. What you want is the best thing.
Yeah, and you want to keep talking about why this one isn't the best thing, because it's not suiting these employers.
And consequently, by not signing that $250 billion bill, 5 days later, they did sign a $484 billion bill,
right,
which fully funded the PPP program to the tune of 320 billion, of which 60 billion was set aside specifically for community-based lenders, smaller banks and credit unions that would give smaller businesses who don't have an established relationship with big banks a better chance of accessing those loans. It also gave 75 billion to help overwhelmed hospitals and 25 billion to set up new coronavirus testing programs. So by delaying for less than a week, they got a lot more of the stuff they wanted, which would help real Americans with the things that they needed.
Yeah.
Our third example is Republicans whenever there's a mass shooting. Because understandably, Democrats tend to use the fact that mass shootings are in the news to say, isn't it time we did something about guns and increased gun control, increased background checks, did some kind of gun control legislation? Because that's when there is an appetite for it, when people are thinking, how can this keep happening? And of course, because Republicans want to shut down that conversation, they call that playing politics. They call asking for genuine life-saving legislation that will address this issue playing politics.
Yeah.
After the Las Vegas mass shooting, Jim Jordan said, the aftermath of a shocking and unimaginable tragedy like what just happened in Las Vegas is not the time to play politics. No, it's the time to do politics.
Quite right. Yes, exactly. Yes. It's the time to bring in some sort of legislation to stop it happening.
And this is Ted Cruz after the Parkland shooting.
The reaction of Democrats to any tragedy is to try to politicize it. So they immediately start calling that we've got to take away the Second Amendment rights of law-abiding citizens. That's not the right answer.
It's always time to talk about gun control in the US. It's the most effective time when that's in the news.
Yeah.
And to Republicans, that's the time you can't talk about it, because talking about it then is playing politics.
That's playing politics.
Yeah.
Yes.
Just this week with the Kansas City shooting, Bill Eiger, state senator in Missouri, he tweeted, to the liberal gun grabbers already trying to use this KC tragedy to push your radical gun control agenda, hear me now, not in Missouri. One good guy with a gun could have stopped the evil criminals who opened fire on the crowd immediately. Guns don't kill people, thugs and criminals kill people. So that one good guy with a gun argument is slightly undercut by the fact that there were 800 armed police at the parade. And the guy that took down one of the shooters was just an unarmed parade guy, just a guy. Right. It's very much them doing the playing politics thing and accusing the other side of playing the politics.
So he's tweeting, let's not politicize tragedy to your own ends, and in the process, politicizing the tragedy.
Absolutely. And just a few years ago, Obama said something after, I can't even remember which mass shooting it was, but he went on TV and said, there'll be calls, people will accuse me of politicizing this.
Yeah.
Let's politicize this.
Yes, because who else is going to fix this other than politicians?
And incidentally, Bill Eiger, who sent that tweet, the Missouri state senator, that's not even the stupidest thing he said this week.
Right.
Because they had a debate about abortion in Missouri in the state house.
Mm-hmm.
And his argument to why there should be zero exceptions for rape or incest is that a 1-year-old could get an abortion if you allow exceptions. Because he thinks babies can get pregnant. I'm not sure which bit of anything he doesn't understand.
He missed.
Most likely everything he doesn't understand.
Yeah.
But that was like he was trying to take it to the absurd result and went a little too far, I think.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, or maybe we could be accused of playing politics if we point out that kind of stuff. Yeah.
And now is the time, I think, for Mark's British politics corner.
So this is kind of where it all came from, because Sunak has accused Starmer of playing politics at least 7 times in the last year. So I've put a montage together of the 4 times he accused him of that in winter 2022-23 and the 3 times in spring-summer 2023.
As ever, engaging in the petty personality politics.
Last week, I offered him Labour votes to pass these housing targets because this is bigger than politics. In 12 hours' time, there's a nurses' strike. All he needs to do is meet the nurses. His inaction speaks volumes. As ever with this Prime Minister, it's Tory politics first, patience second.
The Health Secretary and other ministers have engaged fully, not just with the unions, but with an independent pay-setting process, which takes the politics out of the process and ensures that we can meet those independent requirements with a fair pay deal.
He's not even promising an NHS that puts patients first like it did under Labour. No, he's promising that one day, although we can't say when, their record high waiting list will stop growing. And that's it.
When it comes to the NHS, it's crystal clear. The Conservatives on the side of patients, Labour on the side of their union paymasters. We're protecting public services against undisruptive strike action, Mr. Speaker, and we have new laws to stop the boats. What has he done? He's voted against every single one of those. And that's the difference between us. While he's working on the politics, we're working for the British people. And that's the difference between him and me. He's focused on petty politics. I'm delivering for Britain. But that is the difference between us, Mr. Speaker. While he is always focused on the politics, we are actually just getting on and doing the job.
So as you can see, it kind of changed tone. It just became a whole thing of that's the difference between us. He's on the politics, I'm doing the plan, which is a bit disingenuous because his pledges / his plan not going quite so well. So he's kind of going for, Starmer's got no plan. But it's not primarily the opposition's job to come up with a plan. That's the government's job. The opposition's job is to hold the government and their plan to account and try to effect some change in certainly in the UK, in the draconian strike laws and the inhumane immigration laws, which led to the Rwanda bill. What Sunak accuses Starmer of doing in Playing Politics, Starmer is, so when he says, and he voted against all of those things, he didn't. It's a bit more nuanced than that. What he did was to say that what you're doing is taking away the right of employees to withdraw their labour in order to petition for better working conditions. And that was about the nurses' strike.
Yeah.
But if you want to do that, then you're playing politics because you're not letting them get the bills through unopposed.
Yeah.
And the weird thing is that the first one it starts with, he's playing petty politics as usual and opposing all of this stuff. And Starmer, which was about imposing housing, no, not a cap, the opposite of that. It's just saying here you've got to produce this many affordable houses. Each and every developer that builds a new development has to produce a certain percentage of affordable housing, which is, it's euphemistically called affordable housing because the implication is that every other house is unaffordable, but it's social housing. It used to be that local councils that were funded by central government and local government would build houses. They would become council houses. So that was social housing for people that didn't want to buy. They would just rent, and they would rent from the council. That all got done away with by Margaret Thatcher, who said you should just sell them off. So now developers build houses in return for the developers keeping a lot of the profit when they sell the houses. They've got to build a certain amount of houses for affordable housing. And Starmer and Sunak wanted to put in place a quota. Say, right, you've got to have this many percentage. I think it was something like 40% or something. It nearly went through, and Starmer said, great, I will even whip the Labour Party to vote for the government, for this legislation. And then Sunak got his head turned around, not unlike Trump, by various lobbyists, building developers, and changed his mind, and then accused Starmer of playing politics by opposing this and characterising it as something other than not putting quotas in. And Starmer said, well, hang on a minute, I'm not playing politics. You forget that last week I gave you the votes for this. You've changed your mind now. So, man. Whenever Sunak accuses him of playing politics, he's the one playing politics because I think he still needs to look good in the eyes of his backbenchers, in the eyes of his party. He needs to look like the strong man. So he'd accuse, and every time he does, you get this baying throng of his backbenchers that make this somewhere between a playground and a farmyard noise, and Sunak loves it. He absolutely loves that, and you can see that he's worked out what will trigger that response. And actually, I watched one of these fallacies, a Playing Politics Fallacy, being created in front of our eyes this week. In the first week in February, trans girl Brianna Ghey, murderers, was sentenced to life in prison, and Brianna's mother was in the House of Commons during Prime Minister's questions, and Sunak was doing the whole thing about Starmer and his U-turns, and he said this whilst Brianna's mum is in the House.
I think I counted almost 30 in the last year. Pensions, planning, peerages, public sector pay, tuition fees, childcare, second referendums, defining a woman. Although in fairness, that was only 99% of a U-turn. The list goes on, but the theme is the same, Mr. Speaker. It's empty words, broken promises, and absolutely no plan. Kier Starmer.
Of all the weeks to say that, when Brianna's mother is in this chamber, shame, parading as a man of integrity when he's got absolutely no responsibility. Absolute. Of all.
Brianna's mum, I thought, was inspiring, and it showed the very best of humanity. I have nothing but the most heartfelt sympathy for her entire family and friends. But to use that tragedy to detract from the very separate and clear point I was making about Kier Starmer's proven track record of multiple U-turns on major policies because he doesn't have a plan, I think is both sad and wrong, and it demonstrates the worst of politics.
Well, there's Sunak himself demonstrating the worst of politics.
Yeah, the fact that he pointed out that I used a transphobic dog whistle in front of a murdered trans girl's parent is the worst of politics.
Yeah, no, the fact that he pointed that out.
Yeah, absolutely.
That he pointed it out. Not that I did it.
No,
that wasn't the worst bit. No, the fact that Starmer
he drew attention to it.
Score political points. Yeah, which wow, because he was doing the list, and then he spent more time on that one. And Starmer is just he's at a loss for words. He's
really angry. I've not seen him and especially in PMQs. So he usually keeps his composure very well.
Yeah,
he was really
he just
pissed
stood
off
up,
that
and
he'd done that.
the fact that the baying, school kids on the Tory backbenches all just went, ooh, teacher's really angry. So here we go. So this is another example is dealing with food poverty. In January 2020, Jacob Rees-Mogg accuses UNICEF, the international children charity, of playing politics.
I think it's a real scandal that UNICEF should be playing politics in this way when it is meant to be looking after people in the poorest, the most deprived countries in the world, where people are starving, where there are famines and where there are civil wars, and they make cheap political points of this kind, giving, I think, £25,000 to one council. It is a political stunt of the lowest order. But what has this government done about child poverty? We are committed to our manifesto pledge to reduce child poverty. Since 2010 to 2018-19, there are 100,000 fewer children in absolute poverty in this country. This is a record of successive conservatism, and UNICEF should be ashamed of itself.
UNICEF is a charity to look after the children in the poorest and most destitute countries. So rather than saying this is a bit of a wake-up call, that UNICEF are having to do this in the UK, because what that does is puts the UK on the same footing as those countries outside of the UK that are underserving their children and families. So the grant, yes, they did pledge £25,000 for South London charity to help supply breakfast boxes over the Christmas holidays. This is 2020, and it's during COVID. Schools are closed down. Those eligible for free school meals aren't getting the free school meals because there's no school. And so they said, well, we'll do this. And they also said it's the first time in our 70-year history that we've had to make such an intervention in the UK. And they spent 700,000 in total in the UK. But note also, the Child Poverty Action Group reports that 350,000 more children, over and above the 100,000 that he says have been lifted out of poverty, 350,000 were pulled into poverty in 2021-22, largely because the government cut the £20 universal credit uplift halfway through that year.
Yeah. Child poverty has gone way worse over the last 10 years. Where is he getting his figures from?
Well, yeah, but it's true to say that it did go down over that bit, but it's gone way up since then. Yeah.
What from? Mainly, so was he stopping? He was drawing a line over COVID, was he? Like stopping it?
Drawing like short of COVID.
Yeah.
Yes.
Stop. So
2010 to 2019.
Just before COVID, we were doing really well. Completely ignore the fact that happened and we fucked that.
Yeah.
It's worse now than it was in. It's much worse now than it was in 2010, 2011. It's
4.2 million children are in poverty.
Fucking hell.
Up from 3.6 million in 2010-11.
I wondered if maybe he was just counting those specific children, and over the last 10 years, a lot of them have aged out of being children, so aren't counted in the child's poverty figures now.
100,000 of them are now adults, so we don't have to count
in the adult
them as
poverty
children.
figures.
They're starving adults now. Yeah. So yes.
Fucking hell.
And then to say that it's a political act, there's something in the use of the fallacy that reveals consciences being pricked and shortcomings being identified and people doing things that fill the gaps left by government who should be doing it, or governments who create a society where it can happen. And they do this in order to distract from accusations of neglect. So those delivering to a need are told to stop playing politics. He's making it a political point. It isn't a political point other than him playing politics to make it a political point in order to distract from the dearth of provision coming from the government. And similarly, in July 2021, the England soccer team lost in the UEFA Euros final on penalties against Italy, and Natalie Elphicke, Tory MP for Dover, WhatsApped this about Marcus Rashford, who played in the England team.
A WhatsApp group between 275 MPs, which show one member's view of Marcus Rashford. Natalie Elphicke, the Conservative MP for Dover, WhatsApped the group saying they lost. Would it be ungenerous to suggest Rashford should have spent more time perfecting his game and less time playing politics?
He wasn't playing politics at all. He was campaigning for the government to continue to provide free school meals to vulnerable eligible pupils throughout the school holidays during the COVID pandemic. They're in the vulnerable category. They're getting free school meals because their parents don't have access to funds, even less access to funds when COVID was hit because nobody was going to work. And so he was saying that the provision should be made. It would, why don't you just do that? And the government kind of resisted it, and that sparked Rashford's campaign. Eventually, Boris's government U-turned and did exactly what he'd asked for, and then congratulated Rashford for his tenacity, and he was awarded for an MBE. He was awarded an MBE for the work he did in that regard, despite the fact that they were the ones that were blocking the thing he advocated for and accused him of playing politics when he should have been playing football.
The thing is, I think this is one where, because we talked about this being used outside of politics, which we'll talk about when we get to Fantasy in the Wild. And I feel like this is people being accused of, people who aren't in politics, getting a bit involved in politics, doing something slightly political. And so I think this is an accusation which is levelled at people who they say, stay out of politics. This isn't your job, essentially. Stick to your lane. Which they didn't throw at Donald Trump, the game show host. but they do throw
all the time that he was.
And they will repeatedly interview people like John Voight and Scott Baio on Fox, but argue that Taylor Swift should stay out of politics. And I think this is a different thing. I don't think this is people being accused of playing politics in the same way, because their job isn't to do politics. I think playing politics is like you are playing at it. You're not really doing it properly.
Right.
I think in a way these people are being accused of doing politics when it's not their job. Not actually of playing politics.
Ah, interesting. Yeah.
An angry party spits nothing but blame, and in your eyes a look I see again. And if you'd not said those words, photos might stay. But as you turn to speak, politics are played, as MPs dance their way around the truth. I sit and watch it all get so uncouth. You've no more friends to suggest you stay. And as the clock runs down, politics are played, while you keep hurting us by clinging to your pride. Starmer's been waiting there, and you drove us to his side. You couldn't say the things you should have mentioned to get control of your backbench. You'll see all the distrust that you piled. The polls will close, and you'll be left to find fallacies in the wild. And you'll be left to find fallacies in the wild.
Matt Monro there with the music played.
So in the Fallacy in the Wild, we like to talk about the fallacy of the week from a non-political perspective. And obviously that's pretty difficult this week.
Yeah.
Because we're talking about playing politics. So each of these have a political aspect to them. The first is from The Shield.
Mm-hmm.
And this is, I think, season 1 of The Shield. Acevedo, the captain, is considering running for city council. There's been a double murder in an area which is underserved by the police, and a spokesperson or a kind of assistant to the current city council member is involving herself in the case and wants to hear, for example, why it took so long for emergency services to arrive after the 911 call. Right. So she comes to the barn to find out more about it.
Karen.
I was hoping you had some new information by now.
Unfortunately, no.
Well, what about the 911 tapes?
They're on the way.
We've been trying to find Melissa Kramer before she gets her own tape.
Oh, well, I'd like to listen to them with you. 2 women are dead, David. I hope we're not playing politics here.
So she kind of implicitly accuses him of playing politics in hesitating when she says she wants to listen to the 911 tapes. And the thing is, I think he kind of is a bit, because she is supposedly the current city council member's hand-picked replacement for him, and therefore probably will be running against David in the primary coming up. So Acevedo, as the current police captain, will look bad if his force did a bad job in this, and then the council member can possibly use it against him in the future. But his force probably did do a bad job, and what they really want to do is find the bad guys. But also, on his side of it, I don't know how common it is or how okay it is for the council member or a member of their staff to listen to 911 calls with the police. I think that seems to be playing politics. That's why she wants to get involved in the case. Is so that she can look good to her constituents.
Exactly.
So in him hesitating of like, should I let this politician involve herself in this crime solving? I'm not sure to what extent he's doing it because he wants to cover his own arse, or whether he's actually thinking, is this the right thing to do to let her get involved or not? So
that seemed to uphold my theory that when somebody accuses somebody of playing politics, it's to cover up the fact that they're not doing politics.
Kind of, yeah. I mean, she hasn't really got any particular reason to be there listening to the stuff, other than that she can then go back to her constituents and say, "Oh, I've sorted this for you. You know, I'm making sure that the police do what they're supposed to be doing."
Yeah. So. Which you know, if that was Suella Braverman, that would be, you know, she'd be stirring the culture wars.
Yeah.
As a deliberate act to say it took me to intervene for them to do the investigation that they should be doing.
Her taking part in this has no effect on the investigation at all.
Exactly. And makes her look better than those pesky bloody police who are trying to not keep a lid on it to protect themselves. They're not playing politics in keeping the lid on it. They're keeping the lid on it because they're thinking, might this compromise? Should this come to trial? Would that compromise the evidence base somehow?
Yeah. Although arguably, because no one in the Shield, well, very few of the characters in the Shield are like great people.
Right.
Acevedo is really probably also thinking about his own political career. So
they're all. Let's just call it playing politics. Yeah, that's the shield they're putting up, isn't it? That they're defending themselves against accusations of playing politics. Yeah.
So our second example is from Don't Look Up. And this is a kind of aside. It's not the main story, but this is an interview that a journalist is doing with Chris Evans, who is playing an actor in a kind of disaster movie that's meteor-based and is being released at the same time. And he's wearing a badge that is considered political within the movie.
I know a lot of Hollywood is supporting the Just Look Up movement, but I haven't seen a pin like that.
Yeah, this pin points both up and down. Because I think as a country we need to stop arguing and virtue signaling. Just get along.
That is so refreshing. I think we're all tired of the politics.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's why we made Total Devastation. It's for everyone, you know, it's a popcorn movie.
So his argument is that wearing essentially both sidesism as a badge is because everyone's tired of the politics, and it's just time we put that aside and got along, and that's that, and stop virtue signaling. And I think virtue signaling is arguably the non-political version of this, in that people are accused of it when you are what you're claiming when you accuse someone of virtue signaling is you don't really believe what you're saying. You're just doing it to make yourself look good. You're pretending to support LGBTQ or women or whatever. You don't really think that. You just think that people will think that you're a good person if you say these things. And that's the kind of same thing as playing politics, in that they're accusing politicians of doing a thing that will make them look good rather than actually believing it or doing the real work.
So around the time of Marcus Rashford being accused of playing politics, there was a whole exchange about kind of virtue. They said political gesturing was their version of virtue signaling, vis-a-vis taking the knee, or worst of all, Rishi Sunak wearing an England shirt at a match over his shirt and tie.
So I'm not saying virtue signaling isn't a real thing, doesn't exist. People don't do it. But assuming that someone doesn't actually believe what they're saying and is just saying a thing to look good. If they're not doing that, I think it's fallacious, and it's doing this fallacy. Our third example is entirely political because it's from The West Wing. And this is, I think it might be the final series, where Santos is up against Vinnick, Matt Santos versus Arnold Vinnick, and there has been a problem at a nuclear facility in California, and people are talking about how this should be talked about in the media by the politicians. Josh, by this point, is working on the Santos campaign. and finds something out about Vinnick.
Vinnick lobbied for federal approval for San Andreas 25 years ago. He's the reason the plant's there.
When is this going to break?
I don't know. Press is kind of preoccupied.
We don't want to nudge them along.
We could put it out, yeah. But then he could hit us back for playing politics with a mushroom cloud. If the press finds it on its own, it'll be 900 times bigger.
And what if they don't find it?
They will.
This isn't politics, this is policy. Those places are unsafe. It's a legitimate point.
So Santos's wife's argument is that it's actually okay to put this out to the press, that their opponent lobbied for this nuclear plant to be built, which is now having problems, because, you know, it's a legitimate point. It's not, we're not playing politics if we tell the press about this.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's his political opponent. So it's the fallout from it, for want of a better word, is that it would benefit their campaign at the expense of Vinnick's. Josh says if we did that, we'd be accused of playing politics. And in fact, is a little bit playing politics in saying, let's let the press find it on their own. That will be better for us. We will look better by doing that. And he's right.
It doesn't come from us.
Because a couple of scenes later, we cut to Vinnick's campaign staff who are having this conversation.
They're killing us out there, and they still don't know our guy helped get that plan approved in the first place.
Bob, I know Josh Lyman. There is a reason he is camped out in Florida, the swingingest of swing states. Santos is going to whack us. Then we hit him back for politicizing a national disaster.
Well, it's a big roll of the dice on one weak pair of knees.
Trust me. Josh has the political equivalent of Tourette's syndrome. He can't help himself. We wait for his next spasm, then we strike back. Yeah, Bruno.
They are strategizing, accusing Josh of playing politics when he reveals to the press the thing that they don't want to get out about their candidate. And their plan is to accuse him of politicizing a tragedy.
Yes, of playing politics. So they're playing politics in order to show that they're not doing politics. Yeah. Because, the politics that went on was Alan Alda approving the nuclear facility.
Yeah. And to show that the Democrats in the show are not actually playing politics, the phone call that he gets at the end there is to invite his candidate, Vinnick, to travel to California with the president, because he's the current California senator. So they asked the senator from the state to accompany the president, and Santos will not get to go on that trip because he isn't. He's in Florida. Bartlett, the good Democrat president, is so focused on doing the right thing instead of making his side look good. He recognizes that will benefit Vinnick's campaign to be there on the ground with the president, and Santos won't be there. But it's the right thing to do, so that's what he's going to do.
Yeah, but also, once the press get that story, they won't be able to accuse Bartlett of playing politics.
Yeah.
So is that a political move on his part? Yeah.
Right, before we move on to fake news this week, a couple of things. The first thing is our Oscars pool is now open.
Yay.
If you go to fallaciostrump.com/Oscars, you can sign up. You can choose which of the films you think are going to win in each of the different categories, and we will all compete, as we have done for the last couple of years, to see who is the best at predicting.
And also it's a way to, because we pride ourselves on our film nerdiness, but also I don't have a good track record with this. As per usual, I kind of take umbrage at I tend to vote for who I think ought to win, should win, won't bloody win, but they really should, and in the process accuse the entire Hollywood film industry of playing politics. It's not stood me in good stead. But because I'm completely sold on one or two of the animations, thinking that's just brilliant because I think it's brilliant. Therefore, it's going to win. Whereas you're a more sort of, what are they going to think that is the right, and then consequently come out top.
Well, I'm not the reigning champion. Paul C is currently the champion. He won last year. Yeah. But I did come second, and I came first in 2022. So yeah, I hope to place high, but it is just bragging rights. There's no prize for this.
No,
it's just to have fun and compete and see who does best. But that's
also
not
the
all
prize
it's
actually
about.
is
because what we will do is, for every entry that we get, we will donate $5 to charity in general, we usually do. This year, because it's an election year, we're doing When We All Vote. They're a get out the vote organisation because turnout is important, and ideally, with a higher turnout, there's a better chance of Democrats winning.
Yeah.
The other thing that we're going to do is that we normally do a kind of giving patron money to charity in kind of September time.
Yeah.
And we're going to do that again, but we're going to do it this year for our March patron money. And the reason is because we're also going to give that to When We All Vote. And it's going to make more of a difference if we do it now than just before the election. So if you've been thinking about maybe becoming a patron, if you're already a patron but have been thinking about increasing your patron subscription, or if you just want to increase it for 1 month and then drop it again, all the money we take in through Patreon for March, we will be donating to When We All Vote, along with $5 for every person who joins in our Oscars pool at fallacioustrump.com/Oscars.
And amazing bonus.
Because I will be donating that through my work, we have a system where they will match any donation. So essentially that is doubled. So it'll be the equivalent of twice our monthly patron money plus £10 per person who joins in the Oscars pool. So if you'd like to help with donating a reasonable amount of money, we're not a huge podcast, but that'll be a few £100 at least to the get out the vote process, then you can join in by doing that, by either joining in with the Oscars pool or upping your patron.
Do think about just kind of upping it for 1 month even, and then you're upping it, and then you will guarantee that it will be doubled. It'll be well worth it. And thanks again to all our patrons for being patrons. If you're not a patron, there's a vast library of stuff that you could get access to, plus you get extra bonus bits on these episodes. And we do an episode every week as well for patrons. And
absolutely. What you could do is join up just for a month and challenge yourself in that month to consume all of the bonus material that we've ever put out over the last 143 episodes. See, I'm not sure there's physically enough time. You maybe could listen to it at 1.5 speed or something. It might.
Yeah, it's bad enough trying to watch all the Oscar films in the intervening period without doing that. Yeah, yes, I know. That would be a good challenge.
Yeah,
we should
let us know if you survive it.
If you survive, or whether it's preferable to just chuck ice water over yourself.
So we're gonna play fake news, folks. I love the game. It's a great game. I understand the game as well as anybody.
Yes, it's time for Fake News, the game where I read out 3 Trump quotes, 2 of which are real and 1 I made up, and Mark has to figure out which one is fake news.
So instead of bringing about real substantial differences in the world, this is purely designed to make fun of the democratic institutions, to game the system of government, if you like. We are literally playing politics right now. Well, you are. I'm not, of course.
Yeah, we could call this game Playing Politics, really, couldn't we?
That would just be virtue signaling.
So our theme this week is Trump's views on crime and how bad it is in the US.
Given that he's contributed so much to it.
Ironically. He doesn't talk about that part. Well, I mean, he does. He fucking won't stop talking about that part. But in these quotes, he focuses more on crime committed by other people.
Okay.
So, statement number 1.
Yeah.
What's happening with crime is it's through the roof, and it's called migrant. I call it a new category. I just came up with that name, but I think it's appropriate. It's a new category of crime where they go and they beat up police officers. You've seen that. They go and they stab people, hurt people, shoot people. It's a whole new form. And they have gangs now that are making our games look like small potatoes, okay? Because Joe Biden allowed this to happen, we will call it, from now on, Biden migrant crime, okay? It's migrant crime. We'll call it, I got it, migrant. Let's call it migrant. Biden crime. Oh, that's good. That's smart.
Makes our games look like small potatoes. He just loves coming. Migrant. I'll call it his new character. I just came up with that name, but no, and then migrant. Okay, all right, all right. Yeah.
Okay. Statement number 2. Our Democrat-run cities are really going to hell. They're going to hell. When you look at stores being looted by hundreds of people that run into the stores and run out with television sets, and our great policemen aren't allowed to do anything. They want to, but they're not allowed. They don't want to lose their families, they don't want to lose their sons and daughters and their houses and their pensions and all of that. And they could stop it very quickly. And we just allow them to roam in and roam out. Everybody's out there, you have cameras, these same cameras are out there shooting these people walking out with television sets.
And we allow them to roam in and roam out? Okay, so the policemen, they want to, because they don't want to lose their families. Okay, right, all right.
And statement number 3.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They're the party of crime. They let murderers and rapists go free. They let the open borders mean people are coming from all over who have been let out of prison from South America, the Middle East, from Congo. Oh, hello, what part of Congo are you from? Prison. Oh, great. So, of course, crime is like nobody's ever seen. You can't even believe the numbers. It's like a rocket ship. And if the police even mention the words law enforcement, they get told to just stand aside and let it happen, while large packs of sadistic criminals and thieves systematically rob and steal and roam the streets.
Right. Can't believe the numbers. It's like a rocket ship. Like numbers are. You get arrested for just mentioning law enforcement these days. Yeah, arrested and thrown in jail. What the fuck? That's kind of both mad and a little bit racist all at once. What? Okay, the open borders, South America, Middle East, and Congo. What? Okay. And the other one, they don't want to lose their families. So there's 2 there. See, I'm a bit suspicious of migrant because I think that's too clever by half for him. But that escalation, lose the families, sons, daughters, houses, pensions, all of that, that seems like a fake escalation. Okay, so I'm gonna chance my arm and say that migrant is too big of a joke for Trump to have thought up.
Okay, so the other 2,
yeah,
which are you more convinced by?
More convinced, weirdly, by the Congo one.
Okay,
because it's got lies about crime and racism in there. I think that's probably, I think that's probably true.
Okay.
Yeah.
And number 3 is fake news. I've done it.
Whoa,
I've broken my streak.
Whoa. Wow. Oh, that's excellent. Because the other one, Jesus Christ, that means migrants real. What the fuck? Oh, okay.
So yeah,
nice work.
It's been 7 months since I've won one.
Sounds like a Sinead
And
O'Connor
finally,
song.
yeah.
Wow. And that was the least.
That was the
most innocuous one, the least occulous one. Wow. Oh, look at that.
Yeah, the thing I took from reality. Reality? Are we calling Trump's speeches reality?
Yeah. Actual recorded stuff. Yeah.
Is he has recently claimed, I think it was just the other day, he claimed that lots of people from Congo were coming over the border and that they'd all just been let out of prison.
Oh, right. Okay. Right. Well, that was weirdly, that was the most bizarre bit.
Because I thought it was so weird, random country to just pick.
Yeah.
Out of the blue. But
yeah.
Yeah.
That escalation from I can't believe the numbers is like a rocket ship. That's, I don't know, very Trump-like. Yeah,
so
wow.
That means that number 1.
7 months? I can't believe that. That's amazing.
So it is amazing.
Wow.
It's a very impressive run.
Well done.
Well done you for that length of time. But yeah, so number 1 is real.
What's happening with crime is it's through the roof. And it's called migrant. I call it a new category. I just came up with that name, but I think it's appropriate. It's a new category of crime where they go and they beat up police officers. You've seen that. They go and they stab people, hurt people, shoot people. It's a whole new form. And they have gangs now that are making our games look like small potatoes. okay? Because Joe Biden allowed this to happen. We will call it from now on Biden migrant crime, okay? It's migrant crime. We'll call it, I got it, migrant. Let's call it migrant. Biden crime. Oh, that's good. That's smart.
Why did he go migrant and then Biden crime?
I don't know.
Why didn't he go brime?
I think that is when the first time he said migrant was a mistake. He was trying to say Biden migrant.
Yeah.
And then he thought, that's even better than Biden migrant crime.
So we'll call it migrant and then failed to realise what the portmanteau word was. Yeah. And then a big pause. That's smart.
Yeah.
Yeah. What? It's just a whole new category of culture wars, isn't it? Let's just make up stuff. Yeah, it's a new category of crime where they go and beat up police officers. That's never happened before in the history of policing. But
it's specifically migrants
targeted.
doing it.
Yeah.
See it all over the place.
And then he says, you've seen that, because that just plays into, your worst nightmares, your prejudices are being played out. You've seen that.
Yeah.
Of course you have. Of course you have.
Everyone knows.
Everyone, yeah.
And of course, that means that number two is also real.
No.
Our Democrat-run cities are really going to hell. They're going to hell. When you look at stores being looted by hundreds of people that run into the stores and run out with television sets, and our great policemen aren't allowed to do anything. They want to, but they're not allowed. They don't want to lose their families. They don't want to lose their sons and daughters and their houses and their pensions and all of that, and they could stop it very quickly. And we just allow them to roam in and roam out. Everybody's out there. You have cameras. These same cameras are out there shooting these people walking out with television sets.
And they could stop it very quickly. They just allow them to roam in and roam out. Everybody's out there. You have cameras, these same cameras.
The same ones that are filming him at his rally.
Okay, not the same cameras
media.
that people are walking in and stealing. Oh, okay.
No, he's pointing at the press and suggesting they're watching it happen. They don't give a shit.
Yeah.
So for about a year now, he's been talking about these huge packs of criminals.
Right, yeah.
Running into department stores, killing people. Literally, he's been saying since January of last year, large groups of criminals killing people, robbing everything, and then leaving. And the police can't do anything about it. They're not allowed to.
Right.
I haven't got a fucking clue where he's getting that from.
No.
From context clues and other stuff he's talked about wanting to indemnify the police, the stuff about them losing their families, their sons and daughters, their pensions, their houses and everything, he's talking about people like Derek Chauvin, who get prosecuted for killing people.
Right, yeah.
And that he wants to stop that happening. He wants to, he's fine with the killing, he doesn't want them to be prosecuted and lose their stuff and their families and their freedom.
As a result of killing people.
Police should essentially be allowed to do whatever the fuck they want.
Yeah.
They shouldn't have ever any consequences for any of that. That's his plan. And he's characterising that as if police try and arrest someone they've just seen kill someone and steal a television set, then
they get arrested.
They'll get all their freedom taken away. It's fucking insane.
Does anybody have a television set anymore? Because that just it conjures up big Bakelite square things.
Well, one of our social contestants on Facebook, Richard Thunder Hopkins, makes exactly that point. He says, I have to say, number two is fake only because of the use of the words television set. It sounds stupid these days. It's right out of Bullseye. In one, a lovely remote control colour television set.
Well, it's like politicians in the UK talking about widescreen televisions.
Yeah.
That's a mark of how common people are, because they will buy a widescreen television rather than feed their children.
Yeah.
So we ought not to feed them in order to encourage them to not buy a widescreen television.
They should be.
You can't
they
get
should be
a square.
eating beans and watching a 4x3 cathode ray set.
You can't get those anymore. Widescreen tellies are all you can get. That's it, It all went over to widescreen, I don't know, 2004. my first widescreen telly, but then it got to the point where you couldn't have a bigger screen because the depth of the television to shoot the cathode ray ended up being longer than the room. So
I almost killed myself trying to get a 42-inch cathode ray telly into my house.
Shelf.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, had to live in the back of the box. There was no other room.
Also on Facebook.
Yeah.
Molly Oliver correctly said 3 is fake because it's too cogent.
See, I didn't go along with that. I went with 1 is fake because it's completely mad. Yeah.
Anders on Patreon agrees 3, solely based on my disbelief that he would use Congo instead of Africa.
Interesting.
So,
He
has been talking about Congo.
I don't think he thinks Congo is in Africa. I think he thinks
that's a good point.
Congo is just east
Could be
of
anywhere.
Mexico. Yeah. Yes, exactly.
Scott agrees that number 3 is made up. Says, I doubt he knows there's a place called Congo.
Right.
Number 1 sounds Trumpish. Lots of mixed up words, jumbled syntax, and utter absence of any semblance of a coherent thought process.
Like number 3 is. Right, okay. Yeah.
Will says, number 1.
Yeah.
It portrays him as somewhat of a sense of self-awareness. He doesn't possess that particular human capability, and I don't think that tiny-handed vulgarian is that witty.
Yes, and yes. Well, that was my and the fact that he's listening to what he's saying.
Yeah,
and
although we do hear that a lot, don't we? When he says a thing and then he'll process the thing he just said and think, oh yeah, no, that was a very smart thing I just heard myself say.
Yeah, but exactly. But the fact that he pauses to say, oh, that's smart.
Oh, that's good. That's
when it
smart.
It isn't.
Yeah,
that's the thing. Yeah, but he's taken time out to congratulate himself. On stumbling into a portmanteau word. Yes.
So Kaz Tui on Patreon says, this is a new level of Trump hell. The fact he said 2 of these and probably some of the third is diabolical. Have heard him say something about all 3. So number 2, based on, I thought he had mentioned looters were stealing fridges, which again, he has at another point. He's talked about people stealing fridges.
Widescreen fridges.
Yeah. Renee Z says, I will agree with Anders. Number 3 is fake. If Trump said Congo, he would have said the Congo, because that's what we learned back when he was in school.
Right.
Excellent.
True.
Point.
Yeah.
Although, again, he's been talking about Congo. Invisible Unicorn. I feel like I can hear his voice and cadence in my head when reading through 1 and 2, so I'm going with number 2 is fake. Though the Congo argument is apt. Criminy, did I fall through a wormhole to another dimension? Millions of thinking people think this goon makes sense. How does any of this make sense? Let's see, where's that blue pill?
You can hear the spiraling despair there, can't you? Oh no. Yeah, I'm so sorry. We unleashed it on everybody.
And finally, One-Eyed Nick says, Trump can't say systematically, don't be daft. 3 is fake. So,
you see, now you've all said it. Makes perfect sense. So I fell for that one's obviously he's not smart enough for that. Let's go for that. Turns out he's just in cognitive decline, which I've forgotten to factor in with migrant.
That was quite recent, and I wonder if he's going to start trotting that out now that he's come up with it.
Now that he's come up with it.
I wonder if he's going to start using migrant crime.
Yeah.
Obviously, he'll need to explain its origin every time.
Each and every time.
Because it doesn't make sense on his own.
Because it's not self-explanatory, like all good portmanteau words. Damn it. So, that was very enjoyable. But damn, I could have got 70 then.
Yeah,
not that
sadly.
That would mean anything,
no,
but,
still stuck on 69. Nice.
God damn.
So it's time for the part of the show that this week at least is called $355 million is not a logical fallacy.
Yeah.
Because this section seems to be becoming what has gone badly for Trump in court this week.
Yeah.
Which I'm okay with. I am fine with that.
No, I'm quite liking it. Yeah. It should sustain us for the next 91 episodes.
I think we'll be good. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the main thing we're going to talk about is the huge, although predicted by me and others, fine that he has been required to pay by Judge Arthur Engoron in the civil fraud case. Where Donald Jr. and Eric and he and Alan Weisselberg have all been required to put up some money. His 2 sons, have been fined around 4 million each, I think.
Wow.
Weisselberg's been fined $1 million, and Trump has been fined 354.9 million.
Yeah, just to keep it under the 355.
Which is quite a lot of money.
Yes. Given that he says he's worth a fortune, it's actually quite a large chunk of that fortune.
It is.
That he's going to have to find in order to pay it.
Yes.
How's he going to do that?
I mean, that's a great question. I mean, we questioned that with just the 83 million that he has to pay E. Jean Carroll.
Yeah.
And the same things come into play, really, because in order to appeal this, he has quite a limited amount of time to pay either the full amount to the court or to pay a 10% bond to a bond company which is prepared to put up $350 million.
Yeah, but wouldn't they take 10%?
Yeah, he'd pay 35 million to them, and he wouldn't get that back. And that's their payment for taking the risk on him, essentially.
Right. Yeah.
And again, I don't think a lot of bond companies.
There's a lot of takers.
I don't know how many have that kind of money, because that's a fuck ton of money.
Yeah, because it was a question with the 83 that we were talking about.
So he's already going to be limited to the ones that he can go to, and then those ones who presumably have done quite well for themselves by making good decisions, then would have to decide. He's probably good for it when it's Trump. So
exactly, and also that they would want to be the bond company that associates themselves with Trump.
Yep.
Yeah, and then people in the future would say, "Yeah, did you think that you were going to get that back?"
He is going to appeal, but the question will be how he manages to swing that, because he doesn't.
Does he still have to pay a kind of good faith payment, even if he appeals?
Well, he has to pay he has to pay that money. Essentially, he has to either get the bond or pay the full amount for an appeal to go forward. So he can't actually do that. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Yeah. So then he might get it all back.
Yeah, if he wins the appeal, then he would get it back. He won't win the appeal, obviously.
No. So he can't. So he can't actually delay having to do the payment.
He has 30 days to do that from the date of the ruling. So, I mean, does he have 354 million cash, like liquid assets?
Yeah.
Probably not.
See, if he'd left the EU, you could get that every week. Give that to the NHS. That's exactly the same thing, isn't it? Yeah. So another bunch of liars talking about sums of money.
And the other aspect of this is that it's not just the money. Initially, the ruling that the judge made before the case even started, when he said, he clearly committed crimes. We're just figuring out how much.
Yeah.
He said he was going to take away their New York business certificate, and they would have to dissolve the Trump organization. So that he's walked back. He said, we're not going to do that, but he's not allowed to do any business in New York for 3 years.
So why did he not go through with that?
Partly because that was the thing that was most likely to get overturned on appeal.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
That would be the kind of thing that an appeals court might say, well, taking away his ability for life might be too much. So I think that by redressing that himself, rather than being overturned by a higher court, he's showing that he has taken it into account and been more thoughtful about it, and therefore that is likely to make the higher courts think, this isn't an unreasonable thing. The other thing is that with these kinds of fines, this is subject to interest as well. So unless he pays it immediately, interest accrues on a daily basis.
Oh my God.
So if he requires an appeal and loses the appeal, the amount of time that takes to play out is not something he probably wants to delay too much, because there have been estimates that could add another 100 million to the amount of money he personally owes. But will he also, if he doesn't have that kind of cash on hand and he can't get a bond company to take it up, will he be able to liquidate enough assets in time? Because he also has restrictions on what he's allowed to do through his businesses he has an independent monitor attached to the Trump organization, who is also, she's allowed to hire someone to work for her, and the Trump organization has to pay them a salary. And they basically get to decide anything that comes in or goes out, or any financial documents, any financial decisions, they say yes or no to. So he can't just fold a thing and sell a building or close down a golf course, or they've got to they have to say yes or no to it. So that's going to make it harder for him to do anything that might be a little bit dodgy in order to get the money to appeal the dodgy stuff he's done.
Because there are checks and balances in place to prevent him from doing that.
In Monopoly, if you run out of money, you can just mortgage one of your properties, can't you?
Oh, yeah. There you go.
So, and Mar-a-Lago's worth $1.5 billion, according to him.
Yeah.
So surely...
Just turn that over and
surely he'd be able to get a $350 million mortgage on Mar-a-Lago.
But then they want some sort of guarantee that he'd be able to pay it back.
Well, then, if you don't pay your mortgage, they take your property, don't they? So that's what the loan would be against.
Yeah.
So, all he needs to do is convince a bank that... Oh, hang on a minute. Isn't that the thing he's just been found civilly liable for? He might have some difficulty.
It's a lot.
So what do you need this money for? Well,
I
told banks Mar-a-Lago was worth way more than it was so that I could get loans.
So could you just give me so I've been found guilty of doing that, so I've got to pay off a fine as a result. So given that this is worth $4 billion, could you just loan me $350? Yeah. Plus the added bonus of lots of classified documents. Yeah, in the bathrooms. They've got to be worth something.
They'll be up on eBay by the end of the week.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's cool. It's secret. Yeah, it's been in Mar-a-Lago's bathroom. Yeah, but get your own piece of Trump.
Of course, that's not the only thing that's gone badly for Trump in court these 2 weeks. We've also had the DC Appeals Court ruling that he is not immune from all the stuff he claimed he was immune from, which is quite reasonable because obviously he isn't. And they pointed
he's
out
not a god.
They pointed out that presidents do not have unbounded authority to commit crimes.
That's excellent.
I feel like that shouldn't need a court to say, but
no, that's right. Yeah, or somebody's just kind of pointing out, this is kind of a conclusion. It's like if things were to escalate, this would be where it would go. So, and we think that giving you, so if you think you're, no, you can't do that. You can't just commit crimes and get away with it. No, not having that.
No, they said it would be a striking paradox if the president, who alone is vested with the constitutional duty to take care that the laws be faithfully executed, were the sole officer capable of defying those laws with impunity.
Nice.
So it was a really nice ruling.
Who says the Americans don't do irony?
Yeah.
That's lovely.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
And they also made it clear, this 3-judge panel on the DC Appeals Court, that if he were to appeal en banc to the whole appeals court, they would also turn it down. He will not win an appeal. That doesn't mean he can't appeal.
Yeah.
But he's not. And
not.
I may have overstated. What they specifically said is it won't delay anything. That anything that would be continuing now in lieu of a Supreme Court appeal is still fully able to continue, and that's been read to mean that won't make it. You're not going to win. You're not going to win if you go en banc.
Yeah.
So he is obviously going to appeal that to the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
I think he already has actually, and so they haven't yet said whether they will.
It's the kind of thing they ought to look at.
So that requires 4 justices to agree to look at it. It would require 5 to rule that he is immune
from all of those things that people have pointed out.
And it may be that there are enough judges to say we'll look at it, but not enough to rule in his favour. it may be that the ones who think they should look at it will see that they're not going to win the immunity argument because it's a fucking stupid argument.
Yeah.
But arguably, it is a situation which hasn't been established by the Supreme Court in the past. It's
right.
I think they call it a matter of first impression, or at least it was when it was looked at by the appeals court.
And I wonder also whether they think they might think that it's a time-limited gamble because ultimately Trump will die. But if they put that in place, would that apply to all presidents? So
it would be. That would be a ruling that a president is immune if they decided that.
Yeah.
So we'll see what happens with that. They may decide that they're going to grant cert and so that they can rubber stamp the lower court's decision, and it then has more authority. And there's no question about that. I don't know what they'll decide on that. But the DC Appeals Court decision goes to some length to use the word officer a lot when it talks about the president, which factors into the 14th Amendment case. One of the questions under which is the president an officer of the United States? That's something that the Supreme Court heard oral arguments about a week and a half ago. That ruling probably won't come down for a little while yet, but they do that live. You can hear the audio live.
Right.
And so people listened in and felt that they seemed to be leaning towards putting him back on the ballot in Colorado and Maine, and arguing not necessarily that he didn't commit insurrection, but partly that maybe the president isn't an officer of the court. Also, maybe the 14th Amendment, Section 3, I think it is, isn't self-executing. So it only prevents someone from being on the ballot if Congress decides that.
Right.
I think when we originally talked about this, I said that might be the thing that they rely on because it goes back to a very old case decided by Judge Salmon. The other aspect of it was what they seemed to be asking most about was, does it seem fair that one state can decide who gets to be president? And although that might not be, in this case, Colorado or Maine, because Colorado was going to go for Biden anyway, this allows other states that might have an impact on the actual outcome of the election to prevent him from being on their ballots.
Right.
So should that power be with the individual states, or should it be a federal decision to allow him on ballots or not? The other question that was being asked and talked about was, does the 14th Amendment actually prevent him from being on the ballot, or does it just prevent him from taking office if he were to win?
Right.
So there's a theory that if that's the thing that they come down on, that he could be allowed to be on the ballot, he could win the election, and then the Supreme Court could go, but you can't actually be president.
No.
I don't think they'd step in at that point.
Because that's because that would be open to all sorts of appeals, wouldn't it? On the part of, why did you let go through all of that stuff?
Because you can't, you can stand, like an under 13 5-year-old or a non-citizen could stand for election. People probably wouldn't vote for them because they would know that they wouldn't be allowed to be president.
Like Schwarzenegger could never be president.
Yeah.
He's right-wing gun-toting enough to, I was just going to say,
but he wasn't born,
because
he's not a born
Germany,
citizen.
So,
He's born in Austria, I think, but I could be wrong.
Oh, okay,
also, in this 2-week period since our last episode, there's been shenanigans in the Fulton County case.
Oh, yeah.
With Fonnie Willis and Special Prosecutor Nathan Wade having to answer questions about their personal relationship.
Yeah.
Which, according to them, started after he was hired to work on the case.
Yeah.
According to one of Fonnie Willis's former co-workers, who maybe has an axe to grind because she was arguably fired from her office. It started before Wade was hired. And so there's question over whether that means that this is an inappropriate relationship or that there's some kind of impropriety going on. Also, whether Fonnie Willis has kind of financially benefited directly by hiring someone who might have been her boyfriend at the time and then have been on trips with him and stuff like that.
Right.
So obviously they're asking lots of personal questions about this couple's relationship. They're not actually a couple anymore. Their relationship ended, according to them, kind of around June last year. I mean, it doesn't go against all of the crimes that Trump committed.
No, it has nothing to do with any of that. No, and it doesn't cast any doubt on their ability to try that according
Not really,
to the letter
no.
of the law.
No, it's not great. It gives the other side something to argue about and something to claim is unfair or something like that. It's and I don't know what's going to happen with it. Judge McAfee, who's been kind of presiding over the hearing about it, has said that there's a potential argument that, depending on the situation, she could be disqualified from prosecuting the case, like her office.
Right.
That doesn't mean the case wouldn't be prosecuted necessarily. It goes back to a higher authority who then gets to assign a new prosecutor or prosecuting county to prosecute. And obviously they would have access to the work product that was done by Fonnie Willis's.
Yeah.
So a lot of people have said, this would mean that they'd be starting from scratch again and it throws everything backwards. It doesn't really. It means that it would take time for that other office to get up to speed on everything.
Yeah.
But all of that material has been developed, and there's no fruit of the poisonous tree arguments here that they've done anything that would taint that evidence in any way.
Yeah.
We've also, just quickly, got March 25th will be now the date of his first criminal trial starting, because Judge Marchand in New York has dismissed the kind of final attempts to either dismiss the case or delay it.
Yeah.
And originally, because the DC case was originally set for March 4th, and people were saying, including Trump's lawyers, that doesn't give them enough time to then be in the New York trial, which is the hush money case, the Stormy Daniels hush money case, for March 25th.
Right.
Judge Merchan said, no, we're sticking with 25th for now. Let's see what happens. And during that period, Judge Chutkan in DC postponed her trial because of the unresolved immunity hearings that could affect her case. So because that's been postponed, there's now plenty of time for the New York trial to happen.
Right.
So that will happen now, March 25th, and that will be his first criminal trial. And finally, in Florida, Judge Eileen Cannon, who has been quite pro-Trump in a lot of her rulings, has shot down his latest attempt at further delaying that and postponing pre-trial deadlines, and kept those deadlines at February 22nd. So all pre-trial motions now have to be in by February 22nd, which was her original deadline. There was some consideration that she would extend that. She'd been asked to extend it by Trump's lawyers, but she said, no, what I'll do is I'll keep the deadline of the 22nd, but if there's another 11th hour thing that happens after that you can prove it means it's necessary to give me a new pre-trial motion after that, I'll consider it.
Right.
But absent that, 22nd of February is your last day. So that suggests that she's at least prepared to let the case move forward, because she could have delayed it, and it would have been one of the less unreasonable things she's done.
Right. So does that mean we can put out the tour T-shirt?
No, not yet, because now the Judge Chutkan trial in DC has been postponed and hasn't been given a new date, and we still don't have a date for the Fulton County trial. So
I think we should just fill in the blanks with question marks or TBA or something like that, because it's a brilliant shirt.
It's a great shirt, but
damn being a completist. And finally, some things we really don't have time to talk about.
Special Counsel Robert Hur's report on Biden's handling of classified documents was released last week. The executive summary begins, "We conclude that no criminal charges are warranted in this matter. We would reach the same conclusion even if Department of Justice policy did not foreclose criminal charges against a sitting president." The report continues, "Our investigation uncovered evidence that President Biden willfully retained and disclosed classified materials after his vice presidency when he was a private citizen. but then goes into detail about how there's insufficient evidence to prove he did it willfully, citing multiple plausible, innocent explanations they could not refute, and setting out the significant material differences between his actions and Trump's, saying specifically, unlike the evidence involving Mr. Biden, the allegations set forth in the indictment of Mr. Trump, if proven, would present serious aggravating facts. Of course, that's not been the focus of reporting or of the GOP's reaction, because Hur also decided to include his opinions on Biden's mental faculties, calling him a sympathetic, well-meaning elderly man with a poor memory. This is somewhat outside the scope of the special counsel's job, which is why Robert Mueller's report didn't say, while this report does not conclude that the president committed a crime, it also does not exonerate the weird, smelly orange, narcissistic, pathological liar. The media leapt on the shocking revelation that Biden sometimes forgets stuff, with a renewed round of stories asking if Biden is too old to be president, while conveniently ignoring the alternative is Trump, whose brain is like a steel trap which rusted shut 20 years ago and got repeatedly shat on by all the creatures of the forest. Republicans took an already partisan report, ignored its findings and mischaracterised it to claim it said Biden was either mentally unfit to stand trial or too stupid to commit a crime, ironically using the exact reason that Mueller declined to prosecute Don Jr. Fortunately, this doesn't seem likely to make much of a difference with voters because none of the 81 million people who voted for Biden in 2020 is shocked to discover he's old. And they've all heard of Trump. A Morning Consult poll taken after the report was released found 68% of voters think Biden is too old to be president. That's the same number as previous polls.
When you're feeling a bit low because you didn't get a message of love on Valentine's Day from, say, the candidate that wanted to replace expelled George Santos but failed to get elected, Democrat Tom Swozy defeated Republican Mazi Pilip in a Tuesday special election to fill the vacancy left by Santos in New York's 3rd Congressional District. Perhaps you should start February 14th like Trump did by bemoaning that if only Pilip had given him more love in the form of an endorsement of him. In true Valentine spirit, he thus called her a foolish woman, telling her she knew nothing about modern politics, shouting on Trump's social MAGA, which is most of the Republican Party, stayed home and it always will unless it's treated with the respect that it deserves. I stayed out of the race. I want to be loved. Give us a real candidate in the district for November. I want to be loved? What a giveaway. He didn't forget about Melania, of course, emailing a heartfelt, intimate love note to her titled, "Send Your Love," and after a few endearments someone wrote for him, he signed it informally and coquettishly, Donald J. Trump, in case you didn't know it was from him. She should have known, because at the bottom a link says, "Please leave some kind words for the First Lady this Valentine's Day," which takes you to a fundraising page where you can donate to Trump's campaign. Well, when the First Lady doesn't even appear in the Christmas Trump family photo, I guess you can grift her for all you're worth, hey, Donny? Which actually is not so much these days.
One great example of actually playing politics is impeaching an official who hasn't committed any high crimes or misdemeanours and who definitely won't be convicted by the Senate. Like, say, Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas, who House Republicans claim failed in his role of securing the southern border. Their attempt to impeach him for this was pretty much simultaneously with their committed votes against funding border security measures in case it made Biden look good. They first tried to vote for impeachment on February 7th and thought that they were going to win by one vote until Democrat Congressman hero Al Green from Texas showed up in hospital scrubs in a wheelchair, having just had abdominal surgery to cast the tying vote, 215 to 215. A weird House rule means that any issues that result in a tie cannot then be brought up for another vote until the next session of Congress, which in this instance would be next January. So Republican congressmen changed their vote to no, because if they lose, they get another go, which is fucked up. Anyway, they had another go last week, and thanks to a northeastern storm affecting some members' travel and the return of Steve Scalise from his cancer treatment, they won 214 to 213. A completely pointless victory because they don't have the votes in the Senate to convict, and it's not even clear that Senate Republicans are bothered enough to hold a hearing, so this may be dealt with by a simple vote to dismiss, which only needs a simple majority. I'm kind of hoping the hearing does go ahead, because House Speaker Mike Johnson named Marjorie Taylor Greene and Clay Higgins as impeachment managers, which means they would essentially be prosecuting the case against Mayorkas, and they'd be up against non-crazy people with law degrees, so I'd be making popcorn.
That is so good, wouldn't it? Yeah.
There was the thing about having a fool for a client. Someone who represents himself has a fool for a client. Well, I mean, it can't be worse than being represented by Marjorie Taylor fucking Greene.
Yeah, as impeachment managers. Fantastic. In a mad, ignorance and spite-fueled pronouncement that will not have endeared him to anyone, except perhaps the hoodlums in the Kremlin, who, prospect as much as you like, DJT, are never going to let you join the dictators club you're so desperate to be part of, Trump invited Russia to do whatever the hell they want to any NATO country that doesn't pay enough. In a considered evaluation of the underlying tenet of the NATO agreement that each nation undertakes to protect every other member nation, he said, yeah, fuck it, unless you pay your way, we're going to fling you to the wolves. No, better yet, bad guys, just come get them. We ain't going to do nothing because they're cheapskates who leeched off us all this time. Of course, as Biden and many other NATO allies pointed out, this just gives carte blanche to Putin-style psychos to carry on doing more Ukraine-style things across the globe with impunity. Trump, of course, has completely misunderstood, A, how NATO is funded. NATO has a target that each member country spends a minimum of 2% of GDP on defence, and most countries are not meeting that target. But the figure's a guideline, not a binding contract, nor does it create bills. Member countries haven't been failing to pay their share of NATO's common budget to run the organisation. And B, that his words are very powerful. Despite him saying one endorsement from him could have won Matsi Philip that election, if only she'd been deferential enough, he doesn't think his words have consequences beyond Putin now probably considering him best buds. There used to be a slogan during the 90s promoting information about HIV/AIDS, don't die of ignorance. Let's hope we don't at the hand of Trump's. And let's hope Trump does.
Yep, yeah, we can legally hope that. Yeah. That's fine.
Yeah.
We've talked before about James Comer's obsessive campaign against Joe and Hunter Biden and his uncanny ability to step on rakes wherever he goes in the search for evidence of the Biden crime family. One of the keystones of their evidence that sleepy old cognitively impaired Joe is also a corrupt criminal mastermind raking in cash from all four corners of the globe in a web of villainy was the 2020 claim by an unnamed FBI source that Burisma executives told him they had paid Joe and Hunter $5 million each for protection and that they felt coerced into the payment. Typically, when a single individual makes a potentially libelous claim about someone else, rather than announce it publicly or launch an impeachment investigation, the pragmatic thing to do would be to seek some kind of corroboration, ideally from multiple sources. So, of course, what James Comer did was the exact opposite of that, and immediately started telling everyone who would listen about the smoking gun he'd uncovered and how it definitely proved Biden was the godfather. That unnamed FBI source now has a name. Alexander Smirnov, which we know because he's just been indicted by a Los Angeles grand jury for lying to the FBI. The lie in question, according to the charging documents, occurred in 2020 and concerned a prominent political figure and his son. Despite this, Comer's impeachment investigation will continue because there are always more rakes to step on.
Because you can walk backwards on them, you can walk forwards, yeah. On February the 6th, a group of families met to lobby senators on issues affecting the local transgender community in Georgia. 65-year-old Republican Senator Cardin Summers, the primary sponsor of the state's bathroom ban bill, walked by a mother and her children whilst they waited to meet with Democrat Senator Kim Jackson, a staunch supporter of LGBTQ+ rights. Cardin spoke with Lena Kotler, the mother, and her 8-year-old Alex about that they were there to talk to legislators about keeping our kids safe. And Cardin knelt down in front of Alex and said, according to Kotler, well, you know, we're working on that and I'm going to protect kids like you. Kotler then replied, yeah, Alex is trans and she wants to be safe at school. She wants to go to the bathroom and be safe. And that is when, according to multiple witnesses, Senator Summers stood up and fumbled his words, repeating, I'm going to make sure she's safe by going to the right bathroom. Continuing to use the correct pronouns for Alex. Note, I mentioned Cardin's age because he looks like a grown-up and everything. Well, an adult. Because when asked if he would make her go to a boy's bathroom, he then allegedly backed away saying, you're attacking me, turned around and walked off quickly. This exactly encapsulates the issue of why anti-trans bills that ban transgender people from public spaces that match their gender identity have proven ineffectual in the past. In numerous hearings over bathroom bans, transgender people often point out that cisgender individuals cannot always tell who is and is not trans. If the actual guy who wrote the actual bill can't actually tell who's supposed to use what bathroom, then how, why, just like, what the fuck? And speaking of what the fuck does it matter? I bet Carden uses the same bathroom his wife and daughter does inside his house. Oh, go away. My family want to stop attacking me.
When Republicans claim that fetuses are children, it may seem like just an excuse to control women's bodies, albeit one debunked by simply pointing out that eggs aren't chickens. But they are determined to double down any chance they get. In Alabama, a patient in a Mobile fertility clinic somehow accessed the area where frozen embryos are stored and accidentally destroyed 3 specimens. The all-Republican Alabama Supreme Court just ruled that the prospective parents can sue the clinic for wrongful death because frozen embryos are children. Weird methodology, but I can't say I hate the fact that the couples might get some compensation for the clinic's shoddy security. However, in Missouri, the Department of Transport is taking the argument even further in order to avoid a wrongful death suit of their own. In November of 2021, highway workers James Brooks and Caitlin Anderson were struck by a vehicle on Interstate 270 and killed. Caitlin was 6 months pregnant with a son who she planned to call Jax. The Department of Transport was supposed to have a protective truck in place but did not, so Caitlin's family sued for wrongful death. However, as an employee of the state, Caitlin's case would fall under workers' compensation laws rather than wrongful death, and workers' comp wouldn't pay because it doesn't cover unmarried people without dependents. So the family tried to sue the DOT for wrongful death of her unborn baby Jax. Missouri's state legislature being very red, the DOT didn't make the argument that Jax wasn't a person yet. They went another very different way. They claimed he was also a state employee. A Missouri Supreme Court trial is set for March.
Okay. No one kind of questioning why are they employing somebody who is less than not even born.
Surely child labour laws come into play.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. One Republican legislator in Missouri pointed out that if this is the case, then surely all pregnant state workers should apply for 2 salaries.
Exactly. Yeah. Yes. So here in the UK, February didn't start so well for Kier Starmer and the Labour Party, heading into 3 by-elections with the possibility of demolishing some more of the blue wall in the north of England in Rochdale, Kingswood and Wellingborough by overturning Tory majorities. The then Labour's Rochdale candidate, Azhar Ali, embraced conspiracy theories that Israel allowed the 7th October attacks to happen and made accusations about Jewish influence in the media. A problem for Starmer, who'd so proudly expelled the likes of Corbyn over charges of anti-Semitism, and because Starmer had accepted Ali's apology rather than fling him out of the party and have to get another candidate. After several ructions from within the party, he was expelled, but too late for Labour to stand another candidate. They now have the nightmare possibility of Ali winning as an independent. However, February didn't continue well for Sunak, who lost both by-elections in Kingswood and Wellingborough by a swing to Labour greater than any in any election since the 1940s, trying to remain cheery and blaming it on no incumbent government does well in midterm elections, even though it's an election year and not the middle by at least 2 leaders. Sunak talked about having a plan again, though the plan doesn't seem to include winning elections. Meanwhile, in the House of Lords, despite Rishi seemingly having no idea what the will of the people is, he has warned the House of Lords not to defy that will and pass the Rwanda bill as they scrutinise/tear it to pieces. They are being asked to say that Rwanda is safe now. But the government representative, Lord Stewart of Durlton, was asked if the Rwanda government are working towards putting safeguards in place. That means they're not currently in place. Is that correct?
That's a good point, yeah.
To which he replied, it must do. So, not safe now. And when your own team kind of start admitting defeat, it's time to check it in. Are you beginning to get the message, Rishi? Any message? Hello, Rishi? Can you hear us? Yeah, It's time to go, son.
So that's all the bad arguments and faulty reasoning we have time for this week. You'll find the show notes at fallaciostrump.com, and if you hear Trump say something stupid or want to ask if it's a fallacy, our contact details are on the contact page.
If you think we've used a fallacy ourselves, let us know, and if you've had a good time, please give us a review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts, or simply tell one other person in person about how much they'd like our podcast. And you can support the show at patreon.com/ftrump, just like our newest patrons, Steeler Post, our strawman level patrons Will M, Scott, Ozzy Youngbank, Laura Tomzik, Renee Zed, Schmutz, Mark Reiki and Amber R. Buchanan, who told us when we met her at QED we can just call her Amber, though another listener recognised her at QED this year because we keep using her full name all the time. And our true Scotsman level patrons Melissa Sitek, Stephen Bickle, Janet Uetta, Andrew Hauk, and our top patron Kaz Tui. Thank you so much for your continued and new patronage. It's really very much appreciated. Thank you.
You can connect with those awesome people as well as us and other listeners in the Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/fallaciostrump. And you can join our Oscars pool by going to fallaciostrump.com/Oscars.
All music is by The Outbursts and was used with permission, so until next time on Fallacious Trump, we'll leave the last word to the Donald.
That's right, go home to mommy. Bye. Bye!